Hello and welcome to our part 1 video lecture series on the circulatory system. We are going to start by discussing section 1, which is an overview of the circulatory system. And our objectives are to describe an open and closed circulatory system, describe interstitial fluid and hemolymph, and compare and contrast the organization of the vertebrate circulatory system. And let's start off with the circulatory system architecture. So when we talk about a circulatory system, we are focusing on our cylindrical shaped vessels. These would be the arteries, the veins, and the capillaries. And I quickly am drawing your attention to this image here just to talk about it in the sense of what we see in our human body, where we have our artery that then becomes smaller and smaller and smaller into an arteriole, which then feeds that blood into a capillary. And you can see that the capillary is branching all over. We've got lots of surface area, and this is the area where we'll have gas exchange take place with our tissues. So we'll give off nutrients, oxygen, and pick up our waste products and carbon dioxide and put that into what we call the venule end of the capillary, that then of course drains into the venule and into the vein to go back to the heart. Veins always carry blood back to the heart. Arteries always carry blood away from the heart. So think AA, arteries away. And so now let's discuss what's the difference between an open and closed circulatory system. We have a closed loop system, meaning that our blood is contained inside the blood vessels and it circulates unidirectionally. Uni meaning one means in one direction here. From our heart, so when we're leaving the heart, again, that's an artery carrying it away. We take it through our systemic circulatory route, meaning it's going to all of the blood vessels that supply our organ systems. We give off those nutrients, pick up the waste products, and then we're going to use our veins to travel back to the heart again. And this cycle will continuously take place. So this is a characteristic of vertebrates. Our invertebrates have more of the open circulatory system. Their blood is called hemolymph, and it's not enclosed in blood vessels like we see within our body. Instead, it is pumped into a cavity known as a hemocoel, and these are found in insects, crustaceans, and most mollusks. And so you can see in this image here that we have the hearts in this bee, and the blood, or the what we're going to call hemolymph, is going to travel, and then as the insect moves through its environment, it's going to move through the cavity and then travel back to our hearts over here. And in that fashion, by utilizing the heart as it beats along with the animal movement, we can circulate that hemolymph, and it moves into the hearts through these openings that are labeled here, known as ostia. Then we've got our circulatory systems varying by animals, different animal types. So when we have a simple animal, such as a sponge or a rotifer, which is going to just be a microscopic type of animal that we can find in freshwater environments, don't necessarily need a circulatory system because they are going to utilize diffusion, where we move contents from a high concentration into a low concentration area. Then we have our complex organisms, such as our jellies and our comb jellies, that use diffusion through their epidermis, meaning their skin, and internally through their gastrovascular compartment. And they get an exchange of fluids that's assisted by them pulsing through the water. And when we have even more complex organisms, such as arthropods, think of those insects that have those hard exoskeletons. So when you go to kill them, you hear the little crunch of their exoskeleton, and many mollusks. And so they are going to have an open circulatory system as well. We can see variations of this in the image on the right-hand side, where they are going to have an elongated beating heart that pushes the hemolymph through the body, and muscle contractions will also help to move the fluids. When we have larger crustaceans like lobsters, they're going to develop arterial-like vessels that are going to help to push blood through their bodies, mostly because we are able to create pressure within their bodies, right? And our most active mollusks, which are squids, have evolved by having a closed circulatory system and can move rapidly because of this to catch their prey. And as I mentioned before, our vertebrates are going to have closed circulatory systems. And us being vertebrates, you can think of our circulatory system being very similar to theirs, to other mammals, I should say. Now let's take a look at the circulatory system of a fish. They have a single circuit for blood flow and a two-chambered heart. So they only have one atrium and one ventricle. And we've talked about their gill circulation when it comes to the respiratory system. Now let's talk about it in a sense of circulation of blood. So the atrium is going to start to collect the blood returned from the body. So you could see this vein going up, returning and bringing that blood back to the heart, right? And the job of the ventricle is to then pump this blood out of the heart and over to the gills, which we see pictured over here, where gas exchange is going to take place as the fish swims through the water, because the gills are able to pick up the oxygen and then move that oxygen into its gill capillaries. So our blood is reoxygenated at this point and is traveling through an artery and moving to body capillaries so we can offload that oxygen to the oxygen deprived tissues, and then we'll travel back up through the vein and into the heart again for the cycle to take place again. This is systemic circulation, because our blood is continuing through the rest of the body and coming back to the heart into the atrium. And in doing so, we're producing a gradient of oxygenated to deoxygenated blood around the fish's systemic circuit. Now, what about our amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals? Their blood flow is going to go through two circuits. The pulmonary circuit, which you can see pictured over here more horizontally, and then their systemic circuit, which is pictured a little bit more vertically here. And so when we use that term pulmonary, we're referring to the lungs, and we are directing the blood to leave the heart. We can see that it is deoxygenated at this point. It's traveling to the lungs, where we're picking up oxygen and moving it into the blood through diffusion. And then oxygenated blood is traveling back to the heart. Now, once we enter the heart with that oxygenated blood, we then are going to move that oxygenated blood out of the heart and send it to systemic circulation. Essentially, we're going to the rest of the body, so all of the tissues of the body, and traveling to these capillaries to give off the oxygen, and then whatever is left, our carbon dioxide, we're going to bring that back to the heart for the cycle to take place all over again. Our amphibians use gas exchange through their skin during pulmonary circulation. This is known as pulmocutaneous circulation, and they're going to have three-chambered hearts, so they'll have two atria, which you see pictured over here, and one ventricle. So we've already talked through these circuits, and you saw how we are going to utilize our pulmonary and systemic circulation, and there is some mixing of the blood. That's why we have a little bit of that purple color being shown here in the ventricle. Unfortunately, this reduces the efficiency of oxygenation, so if we were to have something like this happen in the human heart, it is not ideal. And most of the reptiles are going to have three-chambered hearts that direct blood through these two circuits as well. The ventricle is going to be divided though, so we see a septum or a wall put up here, which creates two different ventricles. And now we have less mixing of blood, although we do have a little bit taking place over here. Some of the reptiles, such as alligators and crocodiles, are the most primitive animals to exhibit a four-chambered heart. We see that there's two main arteries that leave the same part of the heart. One is going to take the blood to the lungs. So I know that this is showing blue for deoxygenated blood, but these are capillaries because it's moving, sorry, these are not capillaries. These are arteries because they're carrying blood away from the heart and over to the lungs. This is one of the few arteries that are going to contain deoxygenated blood. So that's why we always define arteries as carrying blood away from the heart and veins always carrying blood back to the heart, rather than defining an artery as always containing oxygenated blood. Other vessels here are going to provide alternate routes to go to the stomach and other parts of the body. And we can see some of these vessels traveling with this mixed blood within it over here as well. We have a structure called the foramen of Panzea. And I couldn't find the best view of this for an animal, but this is what it looks like in our own body if this were to happen. So here's the ventricular wall, and you could see that it has a hole within it, which allows the blood to shift back and forth between the right ventricle and the left ventricle. And as a result, we are mixing that blood, while normally that wall should be in place there. This can also cause the blood to slow the flow over to the lungs. And now let's take a closer look at the heart of mammals and birds. We see there's 4 chambers, 2 atria and 2 ventricles, and we are able to keep oxygenated blood on the left side of the heart separated from the deoxygenated blood on the right side of the heart, which makes it really efficient to have this double circulation.